Thank you to my department director and other city leadership for supporting this. I just want to check, can you see the Emorywood slides?
I can.
So today's event is about Emorywood Estates, and Dr. Johnson has put together so many amazing photos of the people and the places in this community. And I'm so excited to sit back and listen and learn, and I'm thankful for everyone here with us on the call, which he will present in just a moment, but everyone who's watching now and in the future. So please sit back and enjoy and learn about Emorywood Estates. Again, if you have questions or comments, please share. We'll probably have a short Q&A session in the last 15 minutes. Thanks. Can you still see it? So close.
So while Laura's doing that, let me say thank you so much to everyone who is joining us, all of the Durhamites. Laura, are we ready to go ahead and?
You know, a year and a half into the pandemic and still figured it out. So can you see now the slides again?
We can see him, Laura.
Okay. All right. I will mute myself and then turn over to you, Dr. Johnson.
Okay, so thank you so much, Laura, and to the city of Durham for organizing these talks. This is really, really important. Black Durham is a place where you can come here and be someone who is really extraordinary, and then come to Durham and find that all of the people around you are doing many of the kinds of things that you were probably doing. And the Emory Woods community was very much like that. But we're honored to be able to share and to talk about this community. I have on with me attorney Mickey Michaud, former Mayor Bill Bell, and Meredith and Erwin Holmes, and Reverend Dr. Michael Cousin, all of whom have lived in the Emory Woods community, and three of whom are history makers. So we're really excited about today. I'm going to go ahead and start and say that this is just a quick Google map that shows Durham in relationship to where the Emory Wood community is. It lies between Fayetteville Road and North Carolina 55 off of Riddle Road. We can keep moving. This is a 1955 aerial photo of where the community is located. The road that you can see above that X is Riddle Road, and again on either side you can see, actually on the left you can see the rail line, the part of the American Tobacco Trail now, and then a little further to the left you can see Fayetteville Road. Here you have a plat of the earliest section, the first section to be developed in the Emory Wood community, Alfred, Akron, and Jerome. And this is an aerial photo of the community and its boundaries. And this is a recent photo, as you can see, that the community is changing with development on what I believe is the eastern side of the community there. Okay, so at this point, I want to invite attorney Mickey Michaud to talk just a little bit about sort of the early development of the Emory Wood community. He actually knew the developer of that community, and that's Mr. Irvin Herndon.
Thank you, Dr. Johnson, for that intro. But I did know Irvin Herndon, and I knew that he was building a sort of an upscale community for Black folks. And I always wondered why white folks had to build up for Black folks, but I found out that there were certain things that needed to be done in the area. And I was really in the real estate business at the time, and I went to him to see if I couldn't get the business to try to sell some of the lots and some of the houses that he was developing out there. But Irving was a little tight-fisted and didn't want to pay the commission to do that, and just one of those things. But I do remember the very first house that he built out there was Missouri Morris, and things began. I don't know how far I go, but that's a picture of Missouri's house when it was under construction. I moved into the community in 1966, and but it was being built up, and the lots were good size, and homes were custom built, and it was what could have been considered an upscale community at that time.
Can you share a little bit about, as you go forward, there you go. Can you share a little bit about the Morris family?
Well, Missouri's father was named Arledge, his mother and father, and he was one of the better painters in North Carolina. He had a problem though, during the time that he was painting, we were using lead paint, and he became afflicted with the problem with lead paint and had to get out of the business. But he was well sought after by many people in the community, including black and white contractors. Missouri was a stellar basketball player at Hillside High School, and she was married to Cliff Morris, who was the captain in the Air Force at the time, somewhere during that period of time. He got killed while in service, and then that's when she built the first house in Emory Woods.
He was a B-52 pilot, so for everyone, so that's Strategic Air Command, and he did give his life in service to his country. And these photos reflect that that's his daughter, Terry, and this is the retirement of her jersey number 14. She was the first African-American woman to be an All-American in basketball. Erwin Holmes, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yep, we played together at Hillside. She was an outstanding woman basketball player. She went on, I think, to Tuskegee, was it? Anyway,
Philander Smith and then Tuskegee.
Okay, right. She was an All-American, outstanding college level basketball player. She could shoot with either hand. Was just an outstanding player.
Daughter Karen Crawley was the first African-American, the first woman to complete the Tuskegee flight program from ROTC. So this is her in uniform. We can keep moving. Her daughter Terry has double doctorates. She's a doctor of veterinary medicine and also has a PhD. And she runs Vets United, and you can Google that and learn more about the wonderful work that she's doing to support veterans who are returning by pairing them with dogs and pets. Cliff Morris, the son. I should let Mike probably kind of chime in here, but there you go, Michael.
Cliff is now a prominent cardiologist at up in Richmond. The Morris, I think it's Morris Cardiology Institute. He was one that was into fitness. He was an excellent basketball player. Walked on at Carolina and was then played under Dean Smith along with, I believe, with Michael Jordan. Cliff won the 3A basketball championship with some other guys that we knew in Emory Wood. Could have gone somewhere else, but went to Carolina and was able to, his dream was always to go into medicine. And he could have gone professionally, but his dream was medicine. And I know these things from a distance. Although we moved away, we still stayed in touch. And, every now and then I do hear from him, we do speak. Just a well-mannered, just a downright good person. So a good friend, one of the first persons I met when we moved to the neighborhood.
Oh, there's a house that Irving wouldn't let me build. He built it himself. I took the plans to him. He had them rearranged and started building the house there at the corner of Alfred and Jerome Road. And the house had a little bit of color. It was a blue house and stayed that way till I got rid of it. And my wife, June. That picture was taken at the governor's mansion not too long ago. I think it was when I retired from the General Assembly.
I was going to say, share just a little bit about yourself, please, Attorney Michelle.
Well,
just a little bit now, because I know you could talk the rest of the day.
Yeah, I got 91 years behind me. So I was born and raised in Durham, attended public schools, didn't go to Hillside, but went to Palmer Memorial Institute up outside of Greensboro, came back, went to North Carolina College of Durham, graduated, got 2 degrees from there, law school and Bachelor in Science. Worked as an attorney, assistant district attorney, got elected to the state legislature and served Durham County in the legislature for 39 and a half years. Was reelected 20 times. And I was appointed by President Jimmy Carter as United States Attorney. One of the first positions held by a Black in the South since the Civil War. That's, still, when you ask a person who is a lawyer and a politician, I don't know.
Okay, so then we have the Quiet family, and George and Margaret Quiet, and this is their home. We can keep coming to the people. So that's Vincent Quiet, who's another one of Michael and I's peers and former playmates, and his lovely mother Margaret. And there's Coach George Quiet, and Coach George Quiet was for a time the second winningest coach in football at North Carolina Central University. He coached the 1972 team to the Black College Championship game that was actually played here in Durham. And as a good Kappa man, it took a whole lot to be able to put that photo, but all that purple and gold.
Be careful.
You all, Uncle Irwin, I think you would agree. There we go. But that's him and his staff, some legendary coaching members. That's Hank Lattimore on the left and Robert Stonewall Jackson, who was actually an Aggie, but ended up coaching at North Carolina College from 68, I believe, to into the 1990s, and is a very beloved coach at North Carolina Central. But we'll keep moving. West Covington purchased the house next to them, and West Covington played for the Milwaukee Braves and was a member of the team in 1957 when they won the World Series. He is a graduate of Hillside High School and was an outstanding athlete in multiple sports. The Thompson family, who lives next to them, that's Professor Raphael Thompson, who was on faculty at North Carolina Central University and in accounting, and his son, Roderick Thompson, who has recently passed as an MIT grad, and while he was in college, he worked on developing the space shuttle, and he later went to medical school at UNC. Our condolences to the Thompson family. There's a Moore family, Mickey.
Yeah, that's Dr. Don and Barbara Moore. Don Moore and I were in boarding school together, and Dr. Swift, who was OBGYN, was beginning to let us practice, to leave the practice. We had to have a new OBGYN, and Don was I think Dr. Watts got a hold of Don more, and Don knew me, and I, along with Dr. Watts, we inveigled Don to come to Durham to establish OBGYN practice. And he did, and eventually ended up not only in the practice, but also along with your dad out at Duke as teachers at Duke University. So, but they were great. Oh my goodness, and that's Barbara Moore and my daughter, Jocelyn. It looks like that's probably Robin, who is Barbara's youngest child, and my daughter's holding in that picture. I think that's what that is.
So that's Jocelyn and Robin Moore and Christy Simmons, and one of their classmates is Moore family. Robin Moore is an entertainment lawyer in New York and has worked with a number of programs. As Carolyn Collins and Joyce Michaud, and in the far right is a J. Pilgrim sighting. We'll talk more in a moment. Some of the more relatives here, and Bert Collins, who was seated on the right, the gentleman there, who was a former president and CEO of North Carolina Mutual, also lived in the Emory Woods community across the street from the cousins. The Thorpe family.
Yeah, this was the first house that Marion and Lou bought in Emory Woods at the time. They got purchased the second house after he became the last president, first chancellor of Elizabeth City State University. And Marion grew up in Durham, and both Marion and Lula graduated from North Carolina Central University.
That's Lula Glenn Thorpe on the left. My mother, I don't recognize her, but and then Barbara Moore on the far right in the green. We could keep moving, thanks. A lot of great athletes and across Durham, and even on the program with us today. But this is a photo of Charles Bobo Hinton, who played at North Carolina. He actually played at Legan High School over in Raleigh, and then over at North Carolina College in the early 1960s. He was an outstanding pro football player for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Anyone want to speak to the Shipmans?
Well, George Shipman, of course, taught at North Carolina North Carolina College, but later became the president of Livingston College in Salisbury.
You're gonna have to unmute, Mike.
I believe his son Sheldon is pastoring in the Charlotte area with the AME Zion Church.
Right, and he was another outstanding athlete also. He was a college basketball player.
Yes,
Sheldon was.
Yes.
Mhm. Go ahead, Mike. I think you might recognize these people.
Someone's at my door. Hold on just a second.
Okay. All right. So Reverend Dr. Cousin, who just had to step away because someone's at his door. This is his family. His father, Philip Cousin, was the pastor at St. Joseph's AME Church and was elevated to become bishop. And Michael can take over from here. We were just introducing your family.
Yes, you see my mother and father. My father, I believe, was appointed to St. Joseph in 65 or 66, and served there until being elected a bishop in the AME Church. And my mother, who taught at Hillside, and she was the English and Black history instructor there at Hillside. taught numerous persons, and you see my brother Philip, who pastored at one time at St. Joseph, who's also a county commissioner for some time. He's now in California, in Sacramento. My brother Stephen, who is on the left of my mother, who now pastors a church out in Kansas City, Kansas. Above Stephen is my brother, Dr. Joseph Nathaniel Cousin, who was delivered by Dr. Donald Moore, when my mother was expecting at Duke University Hospital, who now pastors a church in Woodstock, Georgia, an AME church. And right above my brother Philip is my brother David, Reverend David Byron Cousin Sr., who is the pastor of Bridge Street AWME Church in Brooklyn, New York. And you see the gentleman in the middle with the blue bow tie, who had hair at that time. That's myself. I am the fourth there were five of us. I'm number four. And we all are serving in various capacities within our denomination. That's a picture of Dad when he's retired now. But one thing about him, he's always one that stressed social justice and education. He did not talk a lot about himself, but even when he was serving as a president at Kittrell Junior College in Kittrell, North Carolina, he was still active in social justice and even hosted a gathering of freedom riders to come and to gather and to strategize of how they can protest against Jim Crow and segregation. That's in Granville, Vance County area, which was a hotbed for the Klan. You see my mother and my father there, and is at the one Sunday of preaching for one of our bishops out in Arkansas. And although he's retired, he's still trying to stay active. He was on the phone with me briefly, and we were talking about his choosing and his work in Durham, and some of his experiences dealing with those persons who were not necessarily in tune for integration or for elevating the rights, recognizing the rights of people of color. You see there his colorful son. That's my third grade picture at Pearson Town Elementary. I attended the first 2 years at W.G. Pearson, which was a good school. But when we moved from the city system into the county system, and Dad was not going to drive me back to W.G. Pearson when you can catch the bus to go to Pearson Town. So thank you for those pictures there, Dr. Chaz.
You're welcome, brother Cousin. I had some funny story I was going to tell about a little boy you used to call Watermelon Head and sing songs about, but I'll pass over that just because of time, for the time being. But our next door neighbors, the Witted family here, George and Alexine and their lovely daughter, Darlene Witted, and George Witted was a graduate of NCC. Mayor Bell, do you like to chime in a little bit about the Witted family?
Well, sure. George and I were friends. George worked at IBM. George is the type of guy that you always knew where he stood. He never minced words, no matter who you were, what the occasion was. He and Willie Levitt and I used to have a lot of conversations about Durham in particular, and more importantly, about what he felt needed to be done to help move Black people forward. A great guy. And his daughter, well, you know, when I was thinking about George, I recall one time George was trying to tell me why I should run for county commissioners. And then on the other hand, he told me why I shouldn't run for county commissioners. He said, you shouldn't run because you just got to Durham, but you ought to go ahead and run because we need somebody on there. So I always appreciated his candor It's upfront in terms of what he had to do. And I guess his daughter at the White House. Is that correct?
That is, I think that, as I recall, that has something to do with Obamacare, and I believe she is participating, obviously, in an event at the White House related to that. But that's Darlene, and then the Levitt family.
Well, Willie and I were next door neighbors, and Willie was one of the reasons that I moved to Durham to take a position with the IBM Corporation. I grew up in Winston-Salem, went to Howard and NYU and all that stuff, but I grew up during the time of segregation. I said I'd never come back south, but coming back to visit friends and families, I could see things changing. And I had a very close friend in New Jersey where I was that was also a close friend of Willie's. They went to Tennessee State together. And we talked, and when I had a chance to speak to Willie, he said, you guys ought to come back here. Things are changing. And we were next door neighbors for a long period of time until he took a position with IBM up in Poughkeepsie before coming back to Durham. And I guess one of the things that I recall, and Mickey, you ought to recall this also, in Emorywood, what I liked about Emorywood, everybody knew everybody. I mean, even though we weren't in and out of everybody's houses, everybody knew each other, but we had an opportunity to talk. And one of the places that we talked was on the street, on Jerome Road. That's where I lived, under the
street light.
Street lights, yeah. A lot of things I accomplished during that time. At least I thought they did, but just a great guy. And there his kids. Of course, everybody knows Tracy and Rodney. Tracy's like my little daughter, and their kids, my kids, Billy and Tiffany, grew up together. And there's another picture of the family, all the kids also, and I guess that's Tracy's daughter. And probably Willie's kids also. I mean, Rodney's kids also. But Willie was a stalwart in this community, and I think everybody who has any history of what has happened, especially with the Durham Committee, knew that he was a political person, did his homework, and provided great leadership. Willie Smith, man, Mickey, you can talk about Willie, but Willie moved into
Willie Levitt's house.
Yeah, Willie's house next door to me when Willie went to Poughkeepsie. And we became great friends. He was a football coach at NCCU, but I'm going to let Mickey talk a little bit more about that.
Well, not much. He didn't stay long. He didn't last long as a coach because he died early in his coaching career at North Carolina Central. But he came in and did a great job while he was there, and it was a great loss to all of us, particularly in the community, because he was going to do great things with North Carolina College's football team, going to carry on the tradition of the Eagles. But unfortunately he died, and we all just missed it.
He was the first Eagle coach to win the MEAC, or to win a conference title in the first year. He did that in 1973.
Right.
We'll keep going.
We joined the MEAC. Right.
So this is a Johnson family. We can kind of go through these. This is an early photo. That's my mother and sister and I. You can keep going, Laura, in front of our home. Thanks, Laura. You can keep going. Thanks. My mother, city councilwoman, and then I think she was the first elected to city council. Carolyn Thornton preceded her. Was appointed to city council. Mom was the second elected judge. You can keep going. That's my father and I. That's one of my favorite photos. He was a physician at Duke, and they've endowed a professorship in his name. He was a fighter pilot before that time. Came to Durham to train at Lincoln, where there were a few opportunities for African American physicians to get training. He was a Howard graduate, knew Bill Bell from that time. Remembered him from that time. But that's my dad and my sister Carla and myself. And then we come to the Bell family. Go ahead to unmute me, Bell.
That's part of my family. Three of my kids, Billy, Anjanae, and Tiffany, and Christian. Tiffany was somewhere in the room. That was at the Durham Community Affairs of Black People, where they honored myself and Judge Lane O'Neill, and the guest speaker was Kamala Harris, and my wife Judith. You can go to the next, whatever's next. And that's Tiffany's. Tiffany put these pictures up here, so that's why you see her as a kid and now I guess as a grown lady working at Duke. And that's my former wife, Gwen, who's still here in Durham.
Dr. Johnson, can you have Ms. Mirabelle share a little bit about himself in case people may not know?
Yeah, right. If you, please.
Well, I mean, my family and I moved here in 1968 to work with the IBM Corporation. We built our house in Emorywood in that same year. So I stayed in Emorywood for quite a while and knew a lot of the people. I had an opportunity to run for the Durham Board of County Commissioners. I served as a commissioner for 26 years, and that's when the commissioners were elected every 2 years, not every 4 years. I chaired the board for 12 years. I was elected mayor in 2001 and served for 16 years when I decided not to run again in 2017. And I've been involved in various aspects of the community. It was just an honor to have an opportunity to serve. And I enjoyed what I was doing, but I knew it was a time for me to give it up. So I was fortunate to be able to decide when I didn't want to be a candidate anymore before the people decided. So Durham's been a good place. And I tell people over and over again, I was here in Durham by choice, not by chance, because I had plenty of opportunities to move elsewhere, especially working with the IBM Corporation. But I just found it to be a great community and still is a great community. Thank you.
And I worked with Bill at IBM, and many people don't realize it, but Bill was the outstanding Black manager for many years at IBM. And I used to challenge to try to be better than Bill, but I could never catch up with Bill. His reputation was so good. He was so successful that I always looked up to Bill and his work at IBM, in addition to the work and all he gave to the city of Durham.
You also know that I pay Erwin well. So you get your check next week, Erwin. Thank you.
Right, Bill. 100,000, like you said.
So right next door to us, that's Vera Johnson Curry and her husband, Dr. Charles Lorenzo Curry. You could change the slide. Who is in the middle here between two of his three sons. That's Judge Mark Curry on the right. That's Charles Lorenzo Curry, who worked with Piedmont Investments here for many years with Ike Green and is still in finance, but with a different company. And he has another son who's a cardiologist. Charles Lorenzo Curry ended up leaving Durham and became the chair of cardiology at Howard for about 30 years. Very prominent and phenomenal Black cardiologist. At the time of his retirement, no one had trained more Black cardiologists in the world than he did. Next slide, please. Next slide, thank you. The Guyan family moved next door after, I want to say after the Currys. Well, maybe there was a family between them, but they lived next door. And this is Deborah Guyan Page and her husband, Reverend Dr. Michael Page, who is the pastor of Antioch Baptist Church here in Durham. She is, I believe, over human resources at the medical school, at the hospital at Duke. Her brother, Darren, her younger brother, and there were actually several siblings, but this is a photo of her younger brother, Darren, who was a playmate of mine growing up and who is now a commercial airline pilot for JetBlue. Maribel, and then this is the Redrick family.
Sure, this is the Redrick family. We were next door neighbors. In fact, our backyards separated each other. They lived on Akron, and I lived on Jerome and Akron. But knew all the kids, and the family was just phenomenal in terms of what they were able to do. They owned a rest home, but somehow they all stick together and pitched in whenever it was time to be there. I think the son is the one that's passed now. I don't know if I think all the other kids are probably still there, but just a great family, good neighbors. And if you ever needed something, they were always there to help you out in any way that they could. So just enjoyed having them as neighbors.
Hmm. It's a Thompson family.
Yeah, they lived on the other corner of Jerome and Akron. Mr. Thompson on the service station at the corner of Burlington and Fayetteville Street. That's his wife. That's their granddaughter, who's an attorney with FDA in Washington. That's her mother, Beverly, and that's their son, Aaron, who is Beverly's husband. Beverly, probably many of you know, works for the city of Durham. I guess the new title is a communications director. When I was there, I talked about her being a public information officer. And that's another daughter of the Thompsons, Pam, and she's in Atlanta, Georgia. Daryl Hamilton. Daryl, there you see him getting pinned, but Daryl, where I knew him from, was obviously lived in Emorywood on Jerome up the street. But just as important, he worked at IBM, and Daryl was the type of person that anytime you need some assistance politically or anything, he was always there. And I guess if they had two kids, but the next picture is
Deidre and Daryl.
Yeah. Deidre is an electrical engineer. I'm not sure if she's in Florida or where, but she went to school to become an electrical engineer. But Daryl, he was a little skinny guy growing up, but you wouldn't think of it now if you look at that picture. Well, obviously, he's following the footsteps of his father, and he's a very successful officer in the United States Army.
Mm-hmm.
Mickey, why don't you do that?
Yeah, Sonny and Juanita Pilgrim. Sonny is a dentist, and Juanita Pilgrim both graduated from North Carolina College at Durham. And he graduated from Howard Dental School. She and he have not, they are both retired now, but she retired as a big time county manager in Cumberland County down in Fayetteville. Both living there. They had two kids, Nisi and Jay. And she was the brain. I always called her the brains of the family. Sonny and I were always the misfits to a degree, but the community. The one thing about the community at the time, the community was always together, and everybody knew what everybody was doing. It was sort of like the community I grew up in, Bill, where when I left school and came down the street, everybody in the neighborhood knew what I did in school, and I got a whipping all the way down the street till I got home and got another whipping. But Sonny and Juanita lived further up, not too far from you, but they were still on Jerome Road, and everybody on Jerome Road knew everybody on Jerome Road, everybody on Alpha knew everybody on Alpha, and everybody in the community at that time knew everybody else.
And they were the next door neighbors of the Hamilton. That's their lovely daughter, Missy Pilgrim, and their son, Jay, two of my closest friends, and that's Jay with his lovely young ones. A lot of stories with Jay. Across the street from them, of course, was the Scarboroughs, right? So this is Clara Scarborough and Scotty Scarborough. Love them to death. Great, super great people. And those are Scotty's boys behind him who are doing great things. And his father, J.C. Skeepy Scarborough. And Mr. Holmes, or you want to speak to old Hillside?
Yeah, I grew up in Rachel, North Carolina, and moved to Durham in the 4th grade and went to Witted school for 1 year in the 4th grade. And there was one little kid in my class who came from this fabulous family, who was known to be the outstanding student in the class and well respected, and one I tried to keep up with, and it was Skeepy. And Skeepy had that kind of life most of his life, grew up in his family's business, which was one of the major businesses in Durham, went to, what'd you say? Did not go to went to Hillside for a year, and then went to Palmer Memorial and finished Palmer, and just was a special businessman in Durham all of his life. Just recently passed. We will miss him forever. He gave to Durham more than most of us would ever hope to give.
and the former owner of Scarborough and Hargett Funeral Home here in Durham, for those who might not know. And the Holmes family again.
You want to say? Oh, okay, I'll speak for the Holmes family. I came to Durham in the fourth grade, as I said, went to Witted, finished Hillside, 1956, went to North Carolina State. Was very lucky that I was in the first class that had black students at North Carolina State. Was the first graduate from North Carolina State, black graduate. Played tennis, varsity tennis, captain of the tennis team my senior year, the first black athlete of any sport in the ACC. Went on to work at IBM and worked at some very great projects, including putting people on the moon, putting vehicles on the moon, designing and building some of the first big computers, working at IBM and with Bill in some really great business opportunities. I designed one of the first systems to actually put internet up and running.
Mr. Holmes, what's going on in this photo?
And in that photo, there's a fabulous lady right there beside me, my wife. I brought her down to Durham from New Jersey, and has been one of the key women in Durham since she's been here. Was voted Outstanding Businesswoman of the Year.
But this picture was in 2018, NC State named the Student Services Building after Irwin. So this is Holmes Hall, and this picture was taken the day of that naming ceremony.
It was a great ceremony too. I had an opportunity to attend, and just proud that they did it for Irwin, well deserved. And he's being modest in other things he's done, but and he's not paying me, but he's great guy.
Well, we could have added Mickey Michaud has a building named after him, and I imagine there's a building that's going to be at North Carolina Central University, our school of education, it's named after. And I imagine there's a building in downtown Durham that will be named after Bill Bell at some point. We should push for that. The Simmons family, this is another one of our neighbors that became a chancellor, actually at two institutions. So you want to speak to this? I see you lean forward.
Well, I can start off. Dallas and Yvonne. Dallas was graduated from North Carolina College and got his doctorate from Duke. He went on to become the president of, I forget the name of the school, a smaller school in Virginia.
St. Paul. First it was St. Paul's. You're thinking about St. Paul.
Yeah, St. Paul. And then he moved to Virginia Union, where he rebuilt that whole school up there. Dallas and Sonny Pilgrim, me, and a few others of us sort of kept in touch with each other through basketball tournaments and whatnot. Dallas, one of the good things I can remember, or one of the things on Central's campus, when Gerald Ford came to visit us, Dallas was the front man, named the front man by the Secret Service to be the major contact for President Ford when he came to speak at North Carolina Central, North Carolina College at the time. And I'm looking at that picture. My daughter, Barbara,
Robin,
and Beanie.
Christy.
Christy.
That's actually Christy. That's Christy. That's Christy Simmons. Right.
Christy, right. And
Robin and Christy were two peas in the pod growing up. You might recall both
actually,
of them.
there were three, because even right now, the three of them still stay in real close touch with each other. Robin, I mean, Beanie, I call her Beanie, my daughter, and Chris. Joe Parker.
So that's Joe and Nellie Parker, and they lived right behind us they were on Brandon, and that's their two daughters, Pam and Tanya. And of course, Joe Parker is an Aggie. We forgive him for that, and then banking is long time and dear friend. It turns out, ironically, he and my father built homes out in Trayburn, and they ended up being neighbors again, just by sheer serendipity. The Schuler family. This is Sandra Schuler, who was the associate AD and head volleyball coach. She's a member of the Hall of Fame, North Carolina Central University. A lot of great athletes. Again, this is the McNeil family. That's Bonnie McNeil and his sister Betsy on the far left, and his mother next to her, and his family. You can see he's holding part of them, but he was a phenomenal basketball player, and played at Hillside, and then went up to Fayetteville State and was a CIAA Player of the Year in 1982. And Michael, how tall you think Bonnie is? About what, 5?
Bonnie had to be about 5'6", 5'7".
Yeah,
If
yeah.
that.
And then this is our good friend Michael Cunningham, and his family. Reverend Roland Cunningham was, I believe, associate pastor at West Durham Baptist Church, and his wife Myrtle. And that's a picture of Michael, who told me he was actually very angry when they took that photo. That's a nice jacket he's wearing. Again, another phenomenal athlete. Mike played basketball at Rice University. If you look closely, you can see he's actually poking one on Akeem the Dream Elijah one there on the right-hand side, and taking a little jumper there. And that's him with Debo on the left, and the comedian Robin Harris, for those of you all who are old enough to remember, who he told me were moving in on his date at an event that they were at. So just some of the guys that we came up. Ronnie Rogers actually moved to the community and moved into the Parker home when I was I think I might have been out of college by that time, but he was a star at Hillside also, and then at Wake Forest, and then in the NBA. And we'll stop there at this point, and just I don't know how we're doing for time, but there's a lot of folks that we can still talk about.
You can still share some stories for another 5 minutes. Okay.
One of the things I'd like to touch on in the early period of the community. So Emory Woods was so it's an all African American community. There was one way into our community and it remains that way actually. And it was one way out. And for the longest time in my, growing up, we didn't have whites that came into the community. If they came into the community, I typically thought they were lost back in the day. But I do recall as a youngster hearing stories, Michael Cousin, about the Ku Klux Klan having taken an interest in the community. Can you regale us with one of those stories, please?
Yes, they used to, in the early days, there was a cornfield and woods behind the neighborhood. And you would see one night we were out, my brothers and friends and I were out, and there were remnants of, you could see persons in hoods going through those woods. And there were some cross burnings in those woods. And my father had several dealings with those persons in those hoods due to the fact of his involvement in civil rights. My mother just shared a story about them calling our house and always calling and threatening to shoot my father for what he's doing. he was out of town, and they called the right person that time. And she told them in her own words where they could go, and she would meet them there, and they would be able to settle things. But we would talk really at an early age that there's some things in the community that we should be aware of, and we looked out. That made us look out for each other. So yes, we did have those moments. We would see in the cornfield certain things that we weren't supposed to see. Then we knew that some of the persons who were associated with the community, knew that as well and protected us from those things.
All right, I'm gonna, at this time, I'll just say, to Attorney Shaw and to Mayor Bell, are there any stories that you all have that you'd like to share? Just some of the people in the community perhaps that we hadn't touched on just yet, or experiences that we could talk about and share to give people a sense of what it was like to live in Emory Woods?
I'll defer to Mick. One thing in particular, though, you have to remember during this period of time, Emorywood was not in the city. It was in the county. It was outside the city limits. So a lot of the things that you see now didn't exist. They were half-acre lots because they had to be a well in a septic tank. Now you've got curb and gutter, city water, and et cetera. I recall also that Mickey probably can talk to it also. We talked about Herndon having developed Emorywood. He also developed some other black neighborhoods, Oakmont Circle and one off of Fayetteville Road. But we put together a community organization, and we had to convince Irwin to give us property in the neighborhood for a community center park. And Mickey, you might want to speak to that, but he didn't do it willingly because he's pretty tight-fisted, but the bottom line is we got it.
Well, I think what happened was with that, Irwin realized that the people who had moved in out there had done great things for him. So he figured he might owe them something. So he gave us that lot. I think I helped incorporate the homeowners association, and he gave us the lot on Alfred Street between my house and the Thompson house as a community lot, and we still use it that way. One of the things, Reverend Michael Cousin, the way you all got to the neighborhood was that when I built my house in 1966, there was a vacant lot behind me, and then Matthew Atwater bought a lot beyond that. And Matthew and I were going to buy that lot from Irving and build a pool on it for both our families. And St. Joseph Church I belonged to, your daddy was minister up there, said they wanted to buy the lot and build a parsonage because, and they needed it because you had 4 other brothers, there were 7 of you in the family, and they needed somewhere bigger to live than the parsonage that was on Federal Street. And as a result of that, Matt and I decided just to give up the idea and let St. Joseph buy that lot, and they built that parsonage there.
And we're the better for it. I do appreciate you acquiescing for that. I must say you were a very good neighbor. And one thing that Dr. Mashal would not say, that he used to throw some mighty nice parties. I used to look at him. So
they were political parties, Mike.
So a lot of, Laura, I guess you, since you have turned your camera on, I guess you're coming to tell us that. Are there questions? Do we have, are we out of time?
I don't think I didn't see as many questions because I was doing the PowerPoint, but I will look at them. I think some people were asking about specific people, so I'll look and follow up, but I'm going to kind of close out for today, and I'll share those with you, Dr. Johnson. And I think I'll probably be able to find contact information for those individuals in case we're able to get back to them then.
Okay, so let me just say then, in that case, thanks to everyone who who turned on today, and we hope that you have taken something away from from the stories that we've shared and the history and experience. And to all of the residents of the Emory Wood community, there's so many folks to give shout outs to. Everybody knows who everyone is. And I'd say thank you to all of the panelists also for hopping on and taking time out to share. Thank you again, Laura.
Yes, thank you. Thank you all for being here. I feel like it was just an overview. There are so many people that I'm sure have so many more stories that I want to go back and look up and learn even more about. So thank you for that. And thank you, as always, to the city staff who help us to put this together, and city leadership who support this work.
Chat box about did Harry Mons live in the neighborhood? Yes, Harry did. Henry live in the neighborhood, and he did, and he worked at IBM as a good friend.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, I think I saw someone mention Dr. Eves, and absolutely, he was one of the deans over at North Carolina Central University, and was someone who was very helpful and instrumental actually in helping me to move forward in my career. Again, so many families there, Daryl and Twiggy. I could just, going through my friends, the Hembricks, the Remsons, on that part of the community, and the Sherrills, and I just go on and on. Barry Armstrong,
And the Campbells.
folks
Do
that
you remember
grew
the
up with.
Campbells?
The Campbells, that's right, Dr. Joe Campbell and the Campbell family. Very lovely people, very prominent dentists here in Durham for many years. The Taylors, who lived across the street from the Atwaters and very good friends of Meredith Holmes. We can, and he was actually, speaking of which, that's another engineer, and he was the weapons officer on a B-52. So, really, really incredible folks in this community, and we could, continue with that. Victor Gatlin, who was a big brother of mine, and his little brother Brian, and the Gatlins. I saw Victor recently, Michael. All right, we'll stop with that, Laura.
Figuring out how to fit them in. Today's recording will be available on the city's YouTube page. We have a playlist that has just all of the past events. This is the 14th of these that we've done in a little over a year now. So please check those out. They also show from time to time on the city's local access TV channel. For many people, it's Durham TV 8. So if you're interested in this, yes, the recording will be available, and it's also available on Facebook immediately, after this event. Coming up next month for September, we have Durham Business College. This was a school on Pine Street for several decades. It was Durham Business College and then Durham College. So I'm very excited to learn more about this topic and to share this with everyone in September. That'll be Friday, September 24th at 12 p.m. And you can register, as always, on our website, durhamcommunityengagement.org. And again, thank you to the city, and see you next time.